Hi guys, and welcome to the final episode of Women in Media, Ministry, Motherhood and Work. And guys, I'm so excited to be seated and joined today with Rev Abi, who is from Salem International Christian Center, my home church, as we talk about motherhood and work. This is a woman who's not only a mother, but she's a wife, she's a businesswoman, someone in ministry, and guys, she carries a portfolio. Not a portfolio physically, but one that has her accolades. Guys, she wears so many different hats and she thrives in them all, and she gives some amazing tips on how you can brand you and also find out the unique selling points that would help you create your own very portfolio. I've already booked my one-to-one session, but guys, please tune in, and I hope you're encouraged and blessed and reminded that you can be all things that God has called you to be. So let's hear the conversation. Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. And today I would love to welcome Rev Abi, who is my auntie, my reverend, who personally goes to my church. And I'm excited to have her here today. This is the final part of the series where we look at women in media, ministry, and motherhood and work. And today, Rev Abi will be talking to us about motherhood and work and what that looks like in a society, in a time where there are stereotypes, where there are biases, and there is discrimination that does happen to women, but we don't have to allow those things to affect us. So I'm excited to have you here today, Rev Abi. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
And yeah, she's an amazing woman. And funny enough, I feel like this is going to be a great time for me to actually get to know you. Sometimes you can do life with people, but not know the life of the people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a great encouragement for me as well. But for those who are watching and for those who are joining us, can you just share for us what you do, and who you are? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here, by the way, and hello everyone watching. So my name is Rev Abi, as has been said. I always find this question, I won't say challenging, but I always come up with what I do, which is a very non-conventional response, and it always leads to more questions. But yeah, I mean, I'm a multifaceted person. I wear many hats. I suppose primarily I'm a wife and I'm a mother. And in ministry, I run the children's ministry of our church, Salem International Christian Center, which I've done for several years now. But outside of that, I do have a career. So primarily, I'm a CEO and founder of a consultancy firm, which I've called AGI Consulting Services Limited. And basically what I do as part of that is I guide firms through their journey, strategic journeys in terms of digital transformation and any sort of strategic business or IT projects that they've got going on. And just by virtue of where my career has come from, I do that primarily in financial services, in the capital market space. But recently, the Lord has been opening some doors in education and in the health sector as well. So yeah, that's my primary role in my career. But apart from that, I'm also a board trustee. So I sit on a couple of boards, and I'm also non-executive director. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Wow, if that's a nutshell, guys, then that's a big nut because I can't even repeat all the accolades and the hats that you wear. But
that's why I said it's very non-conventional.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna take the multifaceted, like you do amazing and different things. And just to go back before I even delve into what you do now, what has that journey been like for you? Because like you rightfully said, you are a wife, you are a mother. Did you always know that this is where you would be? And I mean, for you, you might say you're even still, this is not the end, you're still progressing. But was this always, I don't know, how old am I? I'm 30. So let's go back a couple years, just a couple years, when you were maybe in my shoes or even younger. Did you always know this is what you wanted to do? How has that journey been from being single to being married, having children? Is this always how it's, yeah?
Well, I suppose the married and children bit, yeah, because I mean, we all want to be married and have kids. So I guess I that was always part of the plan. Career-wise, that's definitely a no. And I say that because very early on, like, when I was in school and all that sort of stuff, the plan was actually for me to become a medical doctor. And I mean, probably not unsurprising based on my, Nigerian roots, etc. But yeah, in fact, I actually did a year of medical school, but for various reasons, such as a civil war in the country I was in at the time, I didn't get to finish. And so, yeah, it then left me with a question in terms of actually what did I want to do at that time. And for me, this was in the early 90s when, all of what we know and love today in terms of technology was just evolving. And that seemed like something to get myself involved in. So, I did various studies and sort of positioned myself so that I got into it quite early on. But the short answer to your question is no. I mean, where I ended up is nothing like what I thought, where I thought I would be originally. But I think it's really just a case of, just if I can use an analogy, it's really just a case of, having gathered the right ingredients so that, as I matured in life, I could sort of take the ingredients that I'd gathered and, sort of put it all together and come up with, something that's pretty good in terms of, where I've ended up. But it's been quite an interesting journey, and I'm sure we're going to talk about more about that over the next few minutes based on your question.
Yeah. No, that's really good, because I think even I think growing up and sometimes being young or being a woman, you feel like you have to have kind of almost it set out and like know what the next step is and be going there. And I think it's a good question leading on to about pivoting, because I think for me, as an example, I studied law, get Nigerian background, studied law, did it for 4 years, did a year abroad, was a paralegal. And then in 2017, I said, I'm into media and film. And my parents looked at me and said, what? Media and who? And I pivoted and I left all of that. But sometimes there is, not everyone finds it easy to, like, you said you want to do medicine and then a war broker, and there was other opportunities that arose. How was it like for you pivoting? So for you at that time, were you married? Do you have children at that time making that decision, or how was that period?
No, I was still single at that time. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole medical school thing, I don't know if that really came from me, if it was like just something that was, maybe it's just expected of me and I just sort of followed along as you do when you're at that age. But no, I think, really in terms of pivoting, I think, anybody can pivot as long as you have the determination to do so. And it doesn't really matter what age you're in or you're at rather, because I'm kind of doing a pivot right now, because I spoke about consulting, which I do, and I've done that for a number of years, but I'm now sort of pivoting into sort of board-based career. And yeah, I think anybody can do it at any time, and it's really just a case of I'll go back to my analogy about the ingredients that you have, which could be, based on skills or connections or passion, and just using what you have to get where you want to be, and really being strategic about it in terms of, being able to work out, where you want to be, what you've got now, what's missing, how you get there. And just being intentional and determined about getting there. So, and as I say, you can do that at any stage of life, is what I believe anyway.
Yeah, guys, you see, it's possible. You can pivot, but determination is the one thing you need to get there. Okay, so young single woman, medicine didn't quite work out, but you pivot into this new area. Okay, so just jump in and I don't know the timeline, guys, so we're all learning this together. So you get married and kids come along. What was some of the biggest challenges, or maybe you didn't have any, that you faced pursuing a career, being a mother and a wife?
Yeah. Well, definitely challenges. I wouldn't want to butter it up, guys. There'll definitely be challenges. I mean, just by virtue of the fact that you have these three very important aspects. Well, I'll call it four actually, because you've got your marriage, and obviously that's a once in a lifetime thing. You've got to get that right.
Yeah.
You've got your kids, and that's very important. You've got to get that right as well. You only get one chance at both. There's your career, as you said, but there's some flexibility there, because as we just said, you can pivot as you need to. And then of course there's your service in ministry, right? So all of those things, you're having to juggle all of those things pretty much at the same time. So yeah, it's definitely challenging. But God has actually, I believe, equipped we women to be able to handle multiple important things quite eloquently at the same time, compared to men, if I can say that. Sorry, men, if you're on the call. But yeah, I mean, God has just really equipped women to be able to do this. And, things like time management are absolutely essential, absolutely key. Just being able to, I'd say prioritize. And that's not to say that any of these things are less or more important than the other overall, but there'll just be certain times when you'll just know that, by the prompting of the Holy Spirit, that look, you need to spend more time with your kids. There's stuff going on. The Lord will just lead you and say, you need to spend more time here, be it, on your marriage or with your kids or with your career. So yeah, I think it is hard. It is a challenge, but just have that strong belief that the Lord has really equipped us, us women, to be able to handle these sorts of things. I mean, just looking at the Proverbs 31 woman, as we always do when we're talking about womanhood, and you just look at her and she was doing so many things. She was a businesswoman. She was investing. She was doing all sorts of things. And still her children and her husband called her blessed. So, it is in us, and it is hard, but we can do it.
Yeah. And for you, I know I've asked this question, but in terms of like just practically speaking for you as well, how did that look like? Because I think sometimes, obviously I'm not a mother yet, I'm not a wife yet, but sometimes women or parents can beat themselves up because, you want to be all things sometimes, and you may feel like you're failing. Maybe I couldn't show up to that, or maybe I couldn't do that. For you, how was that? I know you said prioritizing. Did you have was there anything that you practically did that helped you prioritize? For instance, did you have date night once a week? Did you make sure that you went, like, what were sort of the practical things you had to do to make sure that none of those, like you have said, motherhood, ministry, work, the children, none of that fell to the ground?
Yeah. Well, I'd say time management, absolutely essential. I cannot stress that enough. As a woman, regardless of your age. I mean, I'm, saying the same to my daughters, and they're, 19 and 23. I'm telling them, like, from now, you need to know how to manage your time, because, if you think you're having problems now when you're young and single, imagine what it's like when you've got all these different other parameters to deal with. So being able to manage your time effectively to do what you need to do is absolutely essential. But yeah, as you say, creating, as part of that time management exercise, just carving out specific time to focus on, your husband, for example, having that date night, as you said. Definitely.
Date night, something that you still do now?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you have to, definitely. It's like, it doesn't stop. And, even kids, we talk about kids, like my kids are, well, I suppose they're young adults now, but still, every so often I have to carve out time to focus on one of them. It's not even a collective thing where I can say, right, kids, come here. It's like they're different individuals, so I've got to focus on them individually, as I focus on my husband individually, as and when I need to. So yeah, and I think it's an ongoing journey, but as you go along, just celebrating the successes as well, I think is quite important. With your family, with your close knit network as well. It's all part of what helps to make the journey a little bit easier.
Yeah, no, that's good. And for you, just lingering on this little bit here before we move on, in terms of building your career, and like we said, all these different areas, these 4 areas you numbered, were there any sacrifices that you had to make? Did you have to did any one of them have to be sacrificed in terms of, maybe, I know sometimes some women will have to put off their career for a little bit so they can focus on their house, or they have to focus on their children, so they decide they're not going to work. Did you have to make any drastic sacrifice, or any sacrifice at all?
Yeah, I think, maybe I'll answer that question perhaps from the angle of what I know now based on what I knew then. And it's interesting that you brought up that scenario where a woman's got to sacrifice her career for her husband, her marriage, or her children. I mean, to me, I think those 2 things that you just mentioned there are probably the most important things. I definitely would not be advising any woman to sacrifice spending time with her husband or bringing up her children because she wants to build up her career. I definitely would not be recommending that to anyone. And speaking from personal experience, I think maybe looking back, I didn't always get that balance right. So that's why I'm quite vocal in terms of giving that advice to anyone, both here and anyone I can speak to say, look, your marriage, your children, and your walk with God, your service to God, those are important things. Don't sacrifice any of that because you're building up on your career. Because really, I'll go back to my analogy about ingredients. As you're doing those things, you're actually acquiring more ingredients that eventually you can use to build up your career. And it might not be at that time when you think you need to be building up your career,
Yeah.
But eventually all of that, you'll have all the ingredients and you'll be able to put it together to build up a career that's fantastic and even better than you had imagined.
Wow, no, that's good. No, that's good. Thank you so much for sharing. Hopefully that's for anyone watching, that's encouraging to see and just to hear. I think looking back, like you rightfully said, there were things you may have done better, but don't sacrifice your children or your husband for your career. Those are like, I guess those are like the key ingredients you need. So if you sacrifice that, I don't know how.
Well, put it this way, I think, and there's always this analogy that is quite commonly spoken about, on their deathbed, no one's ever said they spent more time at the office. It's always about, oh, I wish I'd spent more time with my husband or my wife or with my children or with God. No one's ever said, oh, I wish I'd spent more time at the office.
Yeah.
No one. Or, more time building up my career. No one.
No, that's honestly true. Think about the end. Have the end in mind, and it probably won't be your career you'll be raving about. No, that's good. And final question, just on this bit, in terms of, like you rightfully said, you sacrifice. How do you deal with guilt? I think I have a friend who just had like two kids, and sometimes dealing with guilt as a mother is a thing that people beat themselves up about. Like, I don't know, if you, fail to make it to one child's performance, or maybe you missed out on something that was, critical, or you feel like you can't be part of this, dealing with guilt as a mother. Because I guess in making sacrifice, there's things you're going to have to say no to naturally, and things you're going to have to decide to say yes to. What would you encourage to anyone dealing with that sort of mother guilt? Or,
well, I think that's probably a follow-on from what we just said, right? So if you take that stance that, look, my children, my home, my ministry, my work with God, or my walk with God are the most important things. So therefore, if Junior's got a play at school, that's going to be important to you, right? It doesn't matter what's happening at work or with your clients. You're going to say, right, sorry guys, I'm not available after X, Y, whatever time it is, because Junior's got a play on at school. So, and as long as you have that outlook that, look, this is important, and you prioritize it, I mean, fair enough, it's not always going to be able to happen for whatever reason, but at least you would know within yourself that you tried your absolute best and you really prioritized it. So, that I think would help to minimize any guilt situations. I think it's really just that in a situation where you've maybe compromised, you said, right, I'm going to try, but, if something comes up, I won't be able to, that's when you might start to feel guilty. But if you've really been determined from the outset that, look, this is what I've got to do, this is important to me, and you made every effort to make it, and I haven't always done that myself, and this is something that I've learned along the way. So, and, I'm still practicing now. It's interesting that you spoke about your friend who's just had 2 kids. I mean, I've got 2 kids, but they're young ladies now, and I've still got to make these, these priority calls, and really just sort of, make sure that I'm prioritizing the right things. So it's an ongoing situation.
No, that's good. Thank you so much for sharing. That's good. I think, like you rightfully said, having your values, like what do you value, and if it's your children and your family, then you always make sure that those priorities are not pushed under by other things.
Correct.
Okay, so like you said, you've gone from single, you're now married, you have kids, and your career is blossoming. Like you've set your priorities, you're balancing having the one-to-one time with your children, you've got date nights with your husband, ministry is going well as well. You've got your priorities in place, and obviously your career is now blooming as well, or it's changing, it's adapting, it's molding. As you've come, obviously moving on from medicine and into the financial services and now having this portfolio, what were some of the challenges you faced along that? Was your womanhood ever something that you had to think about, like when you were rising to be this CEO and this boss woman? And yes, I've got it up. Was your womanhood were there ever any insecurities that you faced, or have you always just been someone that's been determined and you've just kind of crossed the paths, as it were?
No, I think it's been an evolution, because as I said earlier, I started off my career in financial services, and this is going back to the early 90s, where back then there were not a lot of women in financial services, not to talk of women of color. So I was a kind of standout person back in those days. So yeah, it was a very male dominated industry. So it was hard in the beginning, but I think part of that difficulty was just about me not knowing how to work my way around the environment, if that makes sense. And I think, it's quite interesting that, today, like roll forward 20, 25 years, that is all about equality. People talking about, women and diversity and, ethnics and all this sort of thing. So, I think for the up and coming women, I think you guys have a really, really good, solid baseline to really be able to, to build something for yourselves and really position yourselves. Because, back in those days when I was just starting off my career, as I was saying, it's, male dominated environment, a lot of male sort of bullish conversations happening. And then there wasn't really a lot of what you have today in terms of being able to speak up and being able to challenge, so the fact that all of that is quite acceptable these days, I think is definitely a plus. But for me, over time, I once I sort of found my feet and became a bit more confident, I started to challenge.
What did that look like? What does that look like? What does challenge look like for you?
Well, what that looks like is that, just I could be in a meeting. Of course, I'd be the only female in the room, and a table full of men, and having their sort of boyish conversations or managed conversations, some of which might refer to women in a certain kind of way. And I'd be like, guys, you do know there's a woman in the room, and oftentimes they, to be fair to them, a lot of times they, actually just forgot that there was a woman in the room. And so I think, I quickly learned that, just being able to speak up and sort of challenge in a polite way. So I'm not being aggressive or anything like that, but just being able to speak up, I think helps to make things more comfortable for me, and also helps people on the other side to sort of think, before they say something, before they do something, to sort of think, oh, well, how is Abby going to take this? So
that's good. No, I love that. Because I think sometimes, sometimes your silence can be you actually speaking by saying nothing. So I think being confident enough to say, or like you said, there's a woman in this room, that is a good, like you said, and I think I like the fact that you said that you're not being rude or aggressive about it, but you're just bringing it to the surface. In case you forgot, by the way, guys, I am here.
Exactly.
Which is good. And I guess in those environments, when you have been the only woman, have you felt like you can contribute and also be a part of the discussion as much as anyone else in the room?
So again, that's been sort of a learning process, I think, because I think, well, as we all know, the way men communicate versus the way women communicate is quite different. And so, over time, I think I started to understand that a bit more. So it's not that I started to communicate like a man. No, it wasn't. I mean, I'm still communicating, hopefully, like a woman. But I do that in from a place of understanding of how men communicate. So most women, their natural state is to speak in a sort of soft and very gentle voice. But that doesn't really work in when you're in a sort of meeting or forum setting with room full of men. You have to speak in a fairly sort of loud and assertive way. So that that's something that I learned over time.
Wow, no, that's good. And just speaking about your career some more now, I know obviously now you were speaking, maybe you can explain even to me, about this portfolio. So you said you're multifaceted, you've got different portfolios, CEO, you're a trustee. I don't know what's the right question. What's the time span of your career that we're looking at, where you progressed maybe from the financial services to where you are now? Do you know, I don't know, this is an on the spot question, but a rough time span of how long it's taken you to build up to where you are now?
Well, in total, my career spans over 25 years. Wow. But the portfolio career part of it has really just evolved over the last, I would say, 5 years.
Okay.
So I guess in essence, what I'm saying is that, and I think I said it earlier, I could have started earlier if, I had a sort of slightly different mindset, or, I knew certain things then that I now know, kind of thing, if that makes sense. But a portfolio career, anybody can have a portfolio career, and you can start it at any time. And
so what is a portfolio career for anyone who's listening that doesn't know? What is
sure. So a portfolio career is basically a career that consists of you doing multiple things, different things, simultaneously, or maybe not, all at the same time, but, you've got something going on in each of these different aspects that you're focused on.
Yeah.
And effectively means that you can have multiple streams of income.
Yeah.
And it also means that you get to choose what you're working on, because you're going to focus on things that you're good at, things that you're passionate about, things that are current. And often when I talk about this, because I've spoken about it a number of times, I speak about ikigai. I don't know if you have heard of this. I'll spell it. It's ikigai.
Okay.
And it's basically, it's a Japanese term, and it's effectively referring to brand new. And basically what it's saying is that everyone has got a unique brand. Everyone has the ability to formulate their own unique brand. And if you take like a Venn diagram, where you've got circles and they're overlapping, and you've got a slice in the middle that overlaps all the different circles, that is basically the brand you. And it's effectively a combination of what you love, what you believe the world needs right now, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. So it's really just focusing on you. And, it's really just a chance for you to focus on those four aspects and find that space in the middle that sort of is an intersection of all of these things. And that's basically your brand. That's basically your portfolio career. And it's, it's a number of different things. And some of it could be the traditional sort of, doctor or lawyer that we were talking about. If, you just happen to find yourself in that place, I mean, why not? You can stick with that career. But you get to intermingle it with other stuff. I remember the last time I gave a talk on this topic, I was speaking to a young lady who was studying to be a doctor, but she actually loves art, and she's created, she paints. And, I think up until that point, she had been quite torn in terms of, I'm studying to be a doctor, but I love art. Doesn't mean I need to give up my art because, so there's, but the whole concept of this ikigai is that, no, you don't have to give up a part of you that you love, or that, that you believe the world needs. You can combine all of this stuff together into a portfolio career. You can do as many things as you want. For some people, it'll be 2, some people will be 3. For me, I think it's about 4 at the moment.
Love it. Yes.
You can create this portfolio career. And the beauty of it is that it's all driven by you, and, it's driven by your God-given gifts. For example, I was talking about the lady who was really good at arts. It's all driven on it's you-centered. And I know a lot of times it's, people sort of shy away from you-centeredness. But if this means that, you're spending your working hours doing stuff that you love and that you're good at, that in itself helps to make your life more balanced. And means that you can enjoy life and create and manage your time effectively, so that you can do all the things that you need to do with your home, your husband, your kids, your ministry, etc.
No, that gets me so excited. I think even currently, like the stage I'm in and like just the journey I am, I've always felt, not always, but sometimes I felt like I've had to choose one thing, like I can't do this and I can't do that. So I think hearing about that and just, being able to know that you can have this portfolio, you don't have to tie yourself down to one thing and that's it. And you're sitting there always wondering, what would it have been like if I had chosen X, Y, and Z? So for me, or even someone else, like, so when you, sorry, can you repeat, is it Ikigai?
Ikigai. I-K-I-G-A-I. Ikigai.
I-K-I.
Google it.
Actually put it I-K-I-G-A-I. I'm going to look at it after. So ikigai. So once you've established that, okay, I've listened to this now, Rev Abi says, I do not have to be a one-dimensional woman. I can have this ikigai. I can have this portfolio. What does that practically look like? So for instance, let's say I like to host, I like to film, I like to produce. Let's just say those are my 3 things. Do I then, so obviously one I'm doing now, I know that I'm filming. The other avenues I know I enjoy, do I then actively look for areas that will allow me to, I guess, serve in those areas, but also then prioritize when I can do each of those?
Yeah, so time management is the overarching theme across all of this, because we're talking about having 2, 3, 4 dimensional career and you're married and you've got kids and you're doing your ministry work. So, time management is like overarching here. But as we were saying earlier, God has equipped we women. We can do it.
We can do it, guys.
Yes, if you're intentional about it, and you're strategic about it. So I guess to answer your question, depending on how far you are along your journey on the other facets that you're looking to pursue, it will determine what you need to be doing now. So, do you, simple things like, do you have a network? Do you know people that are already in this industry or sector that you're looking to get into? If not, well, you need to, think of ways to build up a network, to attend certain events, for example, or maybe you need to do a bit more research or, a bit more analysis in terms of what it takes to get into this sector or to thrive in this sector. It really depends on how far you are along your journey for each of those dimensions. So for me, for one of the dimensions I'm pursuing at the moment, I've got myself onto a board development course, or should I say the Lord got me on a board development course, because it's definitely him. And this was after I've been through a process of digging deep, doing research, finding out what I need to do, where I need to be, who I need to be networking with. It really depends on how far you are along the journey.
So you can't just wake up, of course, for anyone watching and say, okay, that's great, I want to be this portfolio woman, and not do the work, do the research.
Oh no, you got to put in the work, definitely.
Put in the work. Because listening to that now, I'm like, look, there's work to be done. Because I can't remember the phrase, but I think it's a master of everything, master of none. I'm paraphrasing it probably wrong. But is it important then for this portfolio woman that you establish? So for instance, I'm literally graduating tomorrow, for example. I've just finished doing a course, cameras for television production. So I'm obviously going to enter that career, and I have other things I want to do, but let's just say that's where I'm at. Would you then encourage for that person to, well, keep going in this steadfast, build up your skills and, build up yourself, and then maybe attach something else, and then, or do you do it all simultaneously?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I mean, for me, I've mapped it out. I always like to take a sort of strategic lens on these sorts of things. So I've mapped it out in terms of, what are the different dimensions that I see myself getting into. And then for each one of those dimensions, I sort of map out a plan in terms of, what I need to be doing, this month, this quarter, this year versus next year. And I do that, and even beyond. And I do that for each of the different dimensions.
Nice.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. So you basically have a route for each and what that looks like.
Yeah. And as I need to, I change things, right? So, if I think of something else that I'd like to add in, like a different dimension, I'll add that in. Maybe something's not as hot as it once was. I'll take that out. And then, also the timelines. I mean, we just come out of a pandemic. So, sometimes your plans have got to be flexible.
Yes, 100%. Flexibility, adaptability, key. Well, after this, I'm going to book a session with Rev Abi, guys. I'm going to go and sit down and be like, Rev Abi, this is the portfolio of who I am. Help me. No, you've got so much wisdom. I love that. And just mapping it. I think sometimes seeing a blueprint and seeing how people do it, it gives you possibility, and just see, okay, this is actually possible. And I love that. Again, like I said, the multifaceted woman is possible, but it's not just a wake up and have titles, but no skills, nothing that backs it. There's no route, there's no direction. You've got all these great ideas, but you don't necessarily know where you're going. So I love that. And obviously, like you've shared, your career span, everything that you've been doing. How has your husband been, Rev Abi, my uncle? How was that? Because sometimes people suffer where they're so driven, but maybe the man isn't, or maybe the woman feels like she has to put herself down because he's not there. That might not be your story. Probably isn't, but how was it? How was your husband supportive of that as well with what you were building?
Yeah, but I mean, very supportive. And, that's not to say that the journey has always been smooth. So I've been married now for over 20 years. We've been married for over 20 years. And, obviously a lot of what we've been talking about, kids, career, all that sort of stuff has kind of, evolved alongside of that. But, I think when you get into a marriage, you understand that, your partner, your wife or your husband is going to have their own goals, their own career ambitions,
Mm.
and that, you know, really you're there to support them in any way that you can.
Yeah.
It could be moral support, it could be financial support, it will definitely be prayerful support.
Yeah.
You know? And so, you know, that's been our journey. So, you know, we are in different sectors, or, you know, different career paths.
Yeah.
But, you know, part of the joys or benefits of being married is that, you know, you can use your partner as a soundboard. You know, just sort of get that fresh perspective in terms of, you know, this is what I'm thinking in terms of, you know, what I want to do this year, next over the next 5 years. You can get that fresh perspective from your spouse, which is always good. And of course, you know, you've got someone who's got your back, who's either giving you that physical or moral support, but it's definitely giving you prayerful support. And you know, what I was saying earlier about celebrating success, you know, having someone there who you can celebrate that, oh yeah, I've hit that milestone, you know, I've passed that exam or whatever it is, you know. So yeah, that's pretty much been our journey, to be honest. You know, just supporting each other in terms of what we're looking individually to achieve in our careers.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And so with you, I know you said doing the little maps for the different areas that your let's say your different 4 areas for your portfolio. Is that something you would do by yourself and then present to him and be like, look, this is what I'm planning to do? Or how does that practice? Because obviously if you've got a big plan this year, you know, maybe you want to fly around and do all these conversations. Do you obviously, I'm sure you go to God in prayer, then do you present it to him and be like, yeah, babes, this is what I've got planned. Do you want to have a look and let's sit down and...
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I don't share like the full, I mean, I've got it in a format, and I think probably I can understand that format, or well, I am the Holy Spirit, can understand that format. So I wouldn't like, I don't like take the raw format, if you like, and show it to him, but I'll sort of give him the gist in terms of, you know, what I'm looking to do this year, or this quarter, this month, whatever. And, you know, just run it past him, get his views, fresh pair of eyes. And yeah, that's been how that's worked.
Amazing, guys. It's such an exciting interview. I'm really still stuck on the ikigai. I will book my one-to-one with you. But just because of time as well, I've got probably like 3 more questions. And I think for young women, there's this pressure. I think I kind of referred to it before in a different way, but there's almost a pressure to have a job, be married, own a house, have a kid by 30, have your career sorted. I use the number 30 just because I think in my generation, 30 was always and has always been like, oh my gosh, you're 30 now. And I'm like, yeah, I was 29 yesterday, guys. It's just 1 year, just 30 today. But there's almost that pressure, and almost to the point whereby some people start having serious depression, you know, mental health issues, low self-esteem, feeling almost like they failed. You know, pressures from parents as well, because, you know, mommy's knocking saying, okay, you finished school, you're working, you know, there's just all types of pressures outside the house, in the house. What would you say to, I guess, young women like myself to encourage us on the journey? Like, you know, I think you said your career was, I think you said 25-year span. You've been, so there's been a number of years behind what you've been building. And I know Rev Abi looks young, guys, but she's not 25, I promise you. But, you know, there's been a time span of building this and building this portfolio. What would you say to like young women like myself who are on this journey now?
Yeah. Well, I would say to definitely maintain a strategic view on everything. And basically what that means is that, you know, all that you're working towards is not for the short term, it's for the long term, right? So, you know, it's you know, it's building up towards what you'll be able to say your story is in 25 years time, right? So, you know, and I know there's always pressure, you know, from mothers. I mean, my daughter's going to be 24 this year, so are you pressuring her already? We want grandbabies. But yeah, I mean, you know, always keep a strategic view, you know, in terms of whatever you're doing now, what you're working towards. It's not for what you're going to be able to say next year, although, you know, obviously you do want to be able to say something next year in terms of how you've progressed. But it's about the long term, you know, it's about what your story is going to be in 25, 30, 35 years time. And I think if you maintain that strategic mindset and that strategic perspective,
Yeah.
That will help you to deal with any sort of external pressure that you might be getting from parents or whoever.
Wherever it may be. And just because you alluded to it, like you said, you have a 24-year-old and you want grandchildren. How do you, in terms of relating now as mother to child, how do you have those conversations? How do you deal with, maybe I know some parents will tell you that when I was 24, I was married. When I was 28, I had 3, like they've had it all. Like, how do you deal with that? Like, as a mother, knowing that, okay, I've got 2 girls, and do you have those conversations with them, guys? Is anybody?
Yeah, definitely. Although, for me, I got married when I was 30, so I can't put too much pressure on my 23-year-old at the moment.
Okay. Let's hope, guys.
But no, I think for me, I just at the moment I just sort of drop little hints, sort of let them know what's expected of them eventually.
Yeah.
In terms of getting married, having children, all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
But yeah, all that we've been talking about in terms of ikigai and brand you and having that portfolio career. I mean, my 23-year-old is just starting her career. My 19-year-old is still in uni.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to drop in these little seeds. I think just focusing on the career part, there's this saying by this guy called, I think it's Nassim Taleb, where he talks about how a monthly salary rather, is one of the most addictive things in life. So I'm really trying to make sure that they don't get too fixated in a office-based or a job-based career where you're sort of waiting for this monthly salary to come in. So yeah, it's just little things like that where I'm just dropping in little seeds, little hints, little nuggets as part of my conversation with them. Yeah.
That's amazing. So I feel like one of your daughters has, is it a jewelry business? She sells like
yes.
I know Dora's doing medicine, right?
Yeah, she's pre-med. Yeah, she's pre-med. Yeah.
Amazing. No, that's so good, so good. Thank you so much, Rev Abi. I mean, there's so many questions. I could keep you on here for longer, but I will save that for my one-to-one. But just a final question. Thank you so much for all the wisdom, by the way, you shared. Hopefully you guys watching this, there's so many nuggets, tips, advice you can go away. Like time management, like you said, sings along everything that we're doing, but they're definitely principles or ikigai that you can use to just help you begin to map and navigate brand you. I feel like everyone should get a t-shirt, brand you, brand me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But just a final question just to ask, and I've been asking everyone this question: if you could meet any woman in the Bible, who would it be and why?
Yes, yeah. So I think for me that would have to be Rahab.
Okay.
And obviously, she was a prostitute when we first meet her in the Bible, but I would like to meet her because I want to find out more about her story. The Bible doesn't really tell us the full story in terms of how she got to become a prostitute, but it does tell us about how she was able to, negotiate, a safe passage for herself and her whole family. Literally. At that time when the Israelites were getting into Jericho. And then the Bible does also tell us about how afterwards she eventually ended up getting married. And then she ended up being, in the lineage of King David, and so therefore the Lord Jesus Christ. So there's something about that woman, and I really want to find out, if I could, I'd really want to find out more about her because she's just so intriguing. I feel, how she just managed to navigate, pivot, as you said earlier. So yeah, I think I would pick Rahab.
No, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. So many lessons, so many things to learn. I'm excited to just watch this back. And I keep saying ikigai because I think I've learned something new.
Japanese.
Literally the Japanese way, honestly. So thank you so much for your time. And I definitely feel like I would have you back somewhere down the line because there's just so much wisdom. And I think the older generation speaking to the younger generation and just pouring into us and encouraging us. There needs to be more of that done. We have the peer-to-peer, but the older, I think. Yeah. So thank you guys so much. This is the final series, it's the final episode, but hopefully we'll be back with more. So thank you, Rev Abi, and see you soon.